Friday, Miami. This is Buy, Sell, Hold Miami, a real estate podcast about what's going on in the South Florida real estate market. I'm Peter Zalewski. I'm a condo consultant, expert witness, founder of the Miami Condo Investing Club. I'm joined here by my co-host, the moderator, no one else but Daniel Hernandez. He is an expert in residential real estate. He does single-family houses as well as condos. Check him out at his office over by Monty's in Coconut Grove. What's up, Mr. Hernandez?
What's up, Peter? I get to see you twice this week. This is amazing. Even in the flesh yesterday at Miami Community News. That was really fun.
Yep, that's right. We just launched a new podcast. I'm doing it with the former journalist guy called Oscar Musabe. Daniel, you were our first guest, and we wanted you to be first guest because we knew you were going to be able to put some class to what Oscar and I were doing.
Some hair. A lot of hair. So much hair.
Definitely some hair. Hey, tell me about the Miami Community News Building. Tell me that place is not just a museum.
I wish we had more institutions like that in this town. I mean, you walked into this place, and Michael Miller, I mean, what a persona, and his brother, Grant Miller, they got newspapers on the walls from 100 years ago. They've seen it all. I mean, truly, it's amazing that institution that they built there.
And that's what they say about newspaper people. It's basically the first snapshot of history. And, they've been there for quite some time. And they took this old newsroom that I remember when I first got down here. I worked at Miami Today over on 8th Street and Cayocho. And they took this old newsroom and they basically modernized it, and they got rid of the printing presses. They still got reporters, but now they're doing increasingly video. So the stuff that we're doing here is the same thing that they're doing. So Daniel, listen, we are now the fourth estate. So welcome to the club, my friend.
Well, thank you, sir. And if you're just joining us for the first time today, this is Buy, Sell, Hold Miami, South Florida real estate talk show. So we're going to talk about real estate, but we're going to talk about a lot of other things. And then we always try to back everything into real estate because that's what we do down here in Miami. We do condos, we do cruises, we do a bunch of other stuff too, but mostly that. And it's always very interesting. So if you look at the bottom left of your screen, right under Peter there, we got what we call the rundown. And this is a collection of stories that we collect over the course of the week, and then we're going to talk about them. We got you for about an hour. So we talk about each topic for 7 or 10 minutes. And then at the end of each topic, we either buy, we either sell, or we hold because, well, we don't know. And we're just going to sit back and watch. But jumping into it, Peter, want a permit, give up some land. So this is something that has been happening over and over and over. And I guess it's reached a tipping point and people are pissed. So they're going to the courts. And so we're going to talk about two stories. The first of which is a tale of a developer who got paid out by a jury $409,000 in damages when they went and they sued the city of Pinecrest or the village of Pinecrest. The company's name is Megalodon, like the prehistoric shark. Great name. So these guys went to go, but they bought a piece of property as a developer does, to knock down a house as a developer does, and to build a new one as a developer does. And the city of Pinecrest said, hey, you guys can do that, but we're going to need you to sign this piece of paper, this little affidavit, dedicating the land and waiving the right to sue over it, a little parcel that was on the property. So I'm not talking about eminent domain here, because in eminent domain, they pay you, right? This is, hey, if you want your permit, you're going to have to do this. And a court said that was unconstitutional, Peter.
You know what? This has been going on forever and ever and ever, and it probably will go on forever and ever and ever. State of Florida has taken some steps to try to correct this, if you will. And just to kind of make it real simple, generally speaking, when you're a developer, you're going to make a lot of cash. Think 50% profit margin, think 30% minimum profit margin. Then on the city side, they have to basically deal with all the other stuff that's involved. Sometimes the municipalities, depending on who they are, they can have personality conflicts, and maybe not necessarily the staff who are trained and educated, but more so the people who are elected, who are going to hear back from their voters, their constituents. And it's a push-pull. The shakedowns always come down. Those developers who kind of know how to navigate, they're able to make things happen. That's why I always tell you a developer's got to put 3 on the board in terms of deals before they're ultimately admitted to the club. Up until that point, they're basically going to get screwed on all ways. Doesn't matter if it's the city, it's the contractors, it's somebody. They're going to get hustled along the way. So if you do 3 deals, you're effectively legitimate. But at the end of the day, it's supposed to be about adding to the tax base. Why? 2% property taxes, a third to the city, a third to the school board, a third to the county. It goes back in the coffers. Everybody should benefit. But some of these municipalities, some people go on a power trip, could be staff which are educated and trained, or it could be elected officials who want a donation in order to push something through. So I don't know how you resolve it. The state of Florida is trying to resolve it, and that they are putting in place rules that will basically supersede whatever the local municipalities do. So basically, if you go down this path and you follow all these rules, there's nothing the locals can basically do to stop you. That's the general premise. I don't know how it gets resolved, though.
Well, it seems like that this sends a really big signal. Pinecrest took this to federal court. Pinecrest thought that they had this thing in the bag. They went so far as to try to drag the county into it. So there was some like intergovernmental juice going on here. So they take it to federal court, right? And then they say, well, actually, it wasn't us who needed the right of way. It was the county. And the chief operating officer of the county comes back and says, hey, we gave you guys this road back in 96. Keep us out of your shenanigans. And so that's the Pinecrest story. The plaintiff's attorney said that this is the first time that a developer has recovered business delay damages under the Civil Rights Act for a wrongfully withheld business permit. So this might have been happening, but now this sets a really big precedent for any shenanigans going forward. And so, yes, this happened to a developer. I want to jump to another story in the same vein, but it happened to an end user. And so these are people who don't necessarily have deep pockets like developers. They don't have the investors. They don't have the know-how. This is just somebody who wants to remodel a kitchen. So This gentleman goes to get a permit for a 2-2 addition that he wanted to build because he's got land. You should be able to build whatever you want on your land as long as you abide by the setback and the zoning rules. And so the city of Miami, this isn't Pinecrest now, this is the city of Miami, they told him that he needed to hand over a deed for 500 square feet of his property, like his entire front yard, for public use at his own expense before they'd issue a permit for the addition on his house. That he wasn't going to build on this strip of land. They just wanted it. So go ahead.
Is there a cleanup? Was there something wrong with the way they platted it? There's something wrong with the street, the expansion, or maybe they're trying to make up for it. Sometimes when a developer goes forward, maybe the city adopts a policy and everybody's supposed to adhere to it, but you're not required to adhere to it right away. You're required to adhere to it once you actually improve it to a certain degree. So did it have something to do with this, or was it just a straight up shakedown?
So no, they brought up something. It's called the base building line. Anybody in zoning probably knows about it. I had to read into it, but it goes down to the plotting of the city. Like the city brought out a map that it drew 100 years ago, and it basically says that you can't build past this line because we might want this land for the street someday, right? And that's fairly normal. A lot of cities have setback rules like that. But the problem is that Miami took it a step further, and instead of saying, don't build in that strip, they said, sign over the deed to the strip before we give you a permit to do anything, even the stuff in your backyard that has nothing to do with the street. So like a homeowner couldn't build in that strip, but they still owned it. It's their grass, it's their trees, it's their yard. But the city was using the permit process to convert that ownership into public property for free.
Sounds like quid pro quo to me.
I think so. And you know what? The city knew it, because if you look at the timeline of the city of Miami case, the city winds up relenting and grants the guy the permit 16 months after rejecting it, 5 months after filing a motion to dismiss his lawsuit. And then this guy goes over to the Institute of Justice, which sounds like something out of a Marvel movie. And they showed up. They showed up for this guy. And so 3 weeks after learning that he had retained IJ as counsel, they gave up. And IJ they've gone further. They've identified 1,000 homes threatened by this scheme across 66 streets around Miami.
In these neighborhoods, does it say anything of what neighborhoods were they? Were they neighborhoods that existed, and then the city of Miami, with the expansion in the 1920s, they started to take over other properties, and they were simply just, working them into the overall structure? Or were these newer communities? I can't imagine these are newer communities.
I think this is like Buena Vista or up around in there. Yeah. So like old city of Miami.
Yeah. Old City of Miami. It makes sense. So it sounds like they're really trying to clean up the books in terms of the way everything is set up, so they have something standardized going forward. Can we go back to the pine crust?
Yeah. So let's do it.
Okay, so Pinecrest was unincorporated Miami-Dade County. There was a big push in the late '90s trying to create all these municipalities. That's when you got Sunny Isles Beach. That's when you got Miami Gardens. You got Pinecrest. You got all these types of things. Let me just throw out some data just to give you context about Pinecrest. So the median price of a home in Pinecrest, $1.4 million, according to U.S. Census Bureau. 83% of the people who live in Pinecrest, they own their own home. This is a wealthy area with less than 20,000 person population, 18,981 people. So this is a little bit of let's call it a click, if you will. Sometimes when you go into these types of markets, and I'm not speaking of Pinecrest directly, but this is generally speaking the way it works. When you go into a market, and if you don't know the rules of engagement, and you don't know who you need to donate to, and you don't know who you got to be nice to, and you don't know who you need to bend the knee to, you can get jammed up. And there's all kinds of ways where it comes down to subjective aspects. And the subjective aspect, ultimately, in my mind, leads to cronyism as well as corruption. Now, I'm not accusing Pinecrest of corruption, but what I am accusing them is, let's call it cronyism, in that if it was clear and if a court ultimately ruled that they were in the wrong, you either have people who don't understand what the hell's going on, and or it's being done intentionally. There's no way to split this one way or another. $400,000. I think that's it doesn't mean anything to a $1.4 million home there.
But I mean, this developer bought this dirt like 7 years ago. So this is taxes. This is opportunity costs. I mean, the cost of labor and construction. I mean, to build one of these houses down there, it shouldn't take 7 years. It shouldn't take 3.
Yep. Up and out, maybe 2 years, maybe 3. Yep. You're right.
And that's what these guys build their economic models for. So anything more than that, and it's eating into their margin. Forget 30%. These guys probably aren't even making 10 now.
Yeah, like the saying, Tampa, tits up, right?
Tits up. All right, want a permit? Give up some land. Buy, sell, hold. Peter.
I'm a seller being forced to give up land in order to build within the parameters. So I'm not sure if that's the way the question is asked, but
yes, that is exactly the way the question is asked. Your interpretation was stellar. I too am a sell.
Pound the table, sell.
Pound the table. All right, so this is, we've been talking about some macro things because there's crazy stuff going on in the world, but this is a very Miami episode we're digging into today, and gosh, do we have some material to work with. So Baywalk, they'll get it done. Peter, you've been here long enough. And hell, Peter, you walk everywhere. How far can you walk along the bay? And how many interruptions are there in terms of private property? Because you have private property on the bay.
Yep, you do. So generally speaking, the first time, let's kind of go from the let's go from the Grove. Okay. So if you start at the Grove, we're going to work our way to Brickell, and then ultimately we'll work our way to Design District. Just generally speaking. So if you start in the Grove, effectively, we'll start at, say, Cocoa Walk, whatever they call the new Cocoa Walk, right there on McFarland and Grand in Maine. Yep. Okay, it's still called Cocoa Walk. Okay. So if you go down there, you're immediately going to run on the Peacock Park, which is named after the Peacock family. Old man Peacock had a hotel there.
Eunice.
Named after all the birds. Yeah, wandering around. So you can wander around there. It hugs along. You get into Dinner Key. You get in and around City Hall. You go past the old Scotty's site, which is now replaced with some pretty expensive restaurants. You continue on. You got Monty's. There's a little interruption where you got 2 yacht clubs as well as U.S. Sailing Club. You then get into Kennedy Park. And then in and around there, it's not continuous, but you can go to the end of every street. Street almost ends at the bay. So you're able to get a good glimpse. Continue on. You run into around Mercy. You got Grove Isle, man-made island, where Ugo Columbus just put up his new tower. Come back out. You can still wander. You got Mercy. You got the church that's located there. You wander around. Then you get into Ellis Wainwright Park, which gives you a good glimpse, which is right next to David Martin's new home, as well as Ken Billion's. That's where he's got his 2 properties located there. And he has guys parked outside in a Suburban with nothing in their eyes. You look at them and you think they're like zombies. I'm assuming these are his henchmen. You continue on. You can walk underneath Rickenbacker Causeway. They allow you to do that. You walk along the bay, and then as you get into South Brickell, starts to get a little bit more complicated. There's mostly streets that will end at the bay as you go. Effectively, I guess that would be like east, northeast or so. Yeah, you can see all those streets where they'll end, continue on. Where you really kind of get jammed up is when you start to get in these complexes. There you go. You got 4 buildings right there. That gets a little complicated. It's hard to get across, but then it all picks up again once you come to about 15th Road, where you have St. Jude's, and then I think you have like the yacht club. Yep, right around there.
Right.
It opens up again. It's great. You're continuing walking. You're going past the Jade. You're going past Ken Billion's office site. It goes all the way down, and you get across the river. You can go on Brickell Key, where all the girlies, according to Miami New Times, are pissed because of the work being done and they can't do their walking. And you get into Bayfront Park. You continue on. You get to Museum Park. You get to see the George Perez Art Museum. You get to see the Philip Ross Art Museum. And as you continue on to go underneath the MacArthur Causeway, you can't get through. They put up a damn fence. What's that song by Counting Crows or Janis Joplin? They put up they paved over a parking. No, they put.
It was originally Janis Joplin, then it was Counting Crows. Parking. Yeah, everybody knows the song. But yeah, it was Janis Joplin originally.
But that's what they did. So you cannot get from one end to the other. And now, in order to work your way out of there, you got to meander around, and you take your life into your own hands. Where as people are coming from Biscayne Boulevard headed north, they are cruising about 60 miles an hour, trying to make a right to jump onto MacArthur, and right underneath the Signature Bridge or the Fountain Bridge or the Tarantula Bridge, whatever.
That was supposed to be finished in 2021. We're in 2026.
Exactly. So right in there is really the rub, Daniel, the MacArthur Causeway, getting from the south side of the MacArthur to the north side. And fortunately enough for us, our president has eliminated, because of DEI, the park money that would have gone underneath
the underdeck
expansion. Yeah, the underdeck. I was going to say undercarriage, but the underdeck. And then once you can eventually make it up, Daniel, can you zoom in right to where the MacArthur is?
Yeah, of course. Can I zoom in?
Zoom in a little bit more. Yep. No, I want to take it from the Biscayne Boulevard area. Go back on Biscayne. So you're looking, so you're going north. Yep. Right in there. Zoom in there, right kind of where you got the Metro Mover tracks. Yeah. If you can zoom in, right over there is where you take your life in your own hands, because the traffic is going so fast and everybody's trying to get on that elevated road to MacArthur Causeway. There's no yellow light. There's no stoplight. You're basically, there we go. Right in there. That is basically where it all can go to hell. And it's always a drama. So what they wanted to do is they wanted to make a continuation underneath the bridge on the east side. And these dumbasses can't figure it out. They've been talking about it for years.
So the city commission recently approved the design and funding applications for what they're calling the Baywalk Pedestrian and Bikeway Bridge. 600 feet over the water bridge that would pass under the causeway, connecting the Baywalk from the PAM to the Herald site. Now, we got to go back into a little bit of history. And when I tell you when this whole process started, you're all going to be like, holy shit. 1979. They changed the city charter. 1979. And so in 1979, there was a referendum. They voted, changed the city charter, and they said any new building has to have public waterfront. The problem with all of these buildings over here in South Brickell, Old Brickell, whatever you want to call it these days, is that they were all built in the 60s, 70s, right?
Yes.
Or they got entitled before this charter happened. This charter change happened. And so all of this is all private. And until somebody terminates his condo and tries to build it anew, it can stay like that. It's going to stay like that, because why would any condo association open that up to the public if they didn't have to? Now, any new building that goes up, like Ken Billions' site, like the Jade, they put up the Jade, so that has a public baywalk in front of it. Ken Billions' site, the 4 Ambassadors, whenever the hell that thing goes down, they're going to have to redo that. And then the Miami Herald site. So until somebody builds on the Miami Herald site, which, correct me if I'm wrong, is still owned by the Genting Group, the folks that were trying to put up the casino, until somebody develops there, they tried to dump it to Terra, to David Martin several years ago. I think he might have, did he even have it under contract? The number they threw out there was like $1.2 billion.
Supposedly, ultimately couldn't get the cash to close.
So
from what I read,
until there's redevelopment, we will never see a continuous public baywalk. But this one under the bridge that they've been talking about forever and ever and ever that Peter's saying, that would be huge and welcomed, especially since we're losing the $60 million funding for the rest of the underdeck, which Peter mentioned it was going to be a park that they were going to put under here, but it was a federal grant, and well, because it was for the African American community, it was called a DEI endeavor, which is ridiculous. But hey, it is what it is.
And so everybody knows. So there are train tracks there. Henry Flagler, when he brought his train down, like 1895, City of Miami Incorporated 1896. When they bring the train down, effectively they wrote up into the legal documents that effectively on the west side of the train track was where the African Americans would go, or the black, and then on the east side was where the white was going to go. And then
that's how they segregated it.
Yeah, during segregation days, and this is some of the stuff Flagler put in place. During segregation days, what happened is what's called African Americans, they couldn't use the sand on Miami Beach. Ultimately, there was a protest up at Haulover Beach, and that led to what would become Virginia Key, which was an African American allowed beach. Otherwise, you couldn't go on the beach. And where am I kind of going with all this? Well, when they decided to bring the interstate system in and they set it all up in the 50s, they distinctly went through this area where people who maybe worked on the beach, African Americans, and where would they go? They would go back over to what at the time was called Colortown, ultimately became known as Overtown. And when they brought 95 and they put all that stuff in there, they drove it distinctly through that community to just break it up. And they did it all over the country. And what's happening now is with the replacement of these roads, they're trying to sort of patch it back together. They're trying to eliminate that big wedge that was intentionally done to bust up the community. So it's really kind of a fascinating story. And because of that, because of the money that was earmarked to go in there, like $60 million or something, and because of the elimination of DEI and everything related to Doge and all the other crap that they're doing, the money was lifted. So here you are once again. These guys, this community is basically getting, they're getting screwed,
railed,
and it's so unfortunate.
Baywalk, they'll get it done, right? They'll get it done. I'm selling. They don't have a leg to stand on this. I mean,
the DD is pushing it. They even I went to a presentation like 2 years ago. Oh yeah, it's coming. Forget it, man.
The signature bridge. And then I was talking to somebody about this, and they said, oh, but they got the underline done. The reason why we've seen such a rapid progression with the underline is because they took them so long they were going to lose the rest of the money. Somebody called and said, hey guys, get the trucks, get your shovels. If you guys don't finish it by X date, and then the date's coming up, you're going to lose the rest of the cash, and ain't nobody is spending more money on that. So I'm selling.
They were slow walking the underline. Yeah, 100%. It took forever and ever and ever to get it done. I mean, listen, it's aspirational whether or not they're going to get this thing done. If you look at the plans, they actually have a jetty that goes out. They're going to incorporate almost like I want to say see-through walkway. You can actually see down there. There's going to be stuff related to putting in reefs and stuff. Yeah. It's supposed to be going to be like really cool if and when they ever get it done.
So you can see all the discharge coming off the construction sites in the water. All right.
Also, too, point of reference, so everybody knows, on the other side of where this would connect is where the infamous Miami cannibal incident occurred, where the gentleman was coming back.
Was eating the guy's face, right?
The guy was eating his face and supposedly bath salts or something. It happened right there, right on the bridge, on the north side of the bridge, on the left side of the bridge.
Always with the lore, Peter. Always with the lore. All right.